Hello again, ladies and gents, and welcome back to the AJ Roberts Show with the London Times. Today we are travelling down under. This time we are joined by the lovely Carolyn Gaschk. She is from Queensland, Toowoomba, to those of you who know the place. And I wanted to get some more guests on over the next week or so from Australia to give you guys here in the UK, Canada, the United States, South Africa and all over Europe who are now watching the show a real insight as to what's happening in the different states in Australia at the minute. Everything from the communist state that we now see Victoria finding itself in under the Premier of Dan Andrews. And now Queensland, unfortunately, has suddenly brought out these bizarre rules on unvaccinated people that are going to take place from December. Now, looking at the stats, it absolutely blows your mind how anyone could bring in these mandates. So Carolyn has kindly joined us today, who is a registered nurse and has been for 39 years, working within the Queensland healthcare system. Carolyn, thank you for joining us, firstly.
Hi, AJ.
It's honestly, it's a real pleasure to have you. I know that you've been quite upset and very concerned with what's been happening in the beautiful state of Queensland. Obviously, I mentioned before, I was fortunate to live there on the Gold Coast for 2.5 years with my family. Very sorely missed. Got lots of great friends, family there, who are all deeply alarmed by what is actually unfolding over on the other side of the world. Can you give us a bit about your background, just add a bit of context to what you do for the audience,
Sure.
please?
Yes. Once I left school, I went straight into nursing. I specialised in accident and emergency. I was South East Queensland regional winner of Nurse of the Year in 1983. I went flying actually back in the late 80s with Qantas International, and my medical experience was used many times because while I was an emergency trained nurse, I did aviation medicine, so we would retrieve people from the rural areas of southeast Queensland to the main hospitals by helicopter or fixed wing. So that was my main job experience when I was in my 20s and had plenty of adrenaline. And then after I finished flying, the last 20 odd years, I've just been specialising just in private practice in super clinics, which is major GP practices all joined together with allied health.
Wow. So a pretty experienced nurse then.
Oh, well, if you say so. We can still make mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. We all make mistakes. That's what makes us, which makes us human. Unfortunately, we're seeing quite a large number of very concerning mistakes being made within the healthcare system and just in the social setting within Queensland and the wider Australia right now. I genuinely can't believe what I'm seeing. It just blows my mind every day. What I keep seeing coming out of Australia. Can you give us a bit of an idea, obviously, working within the healthcare sector, what you've seen over the last sort of 12 to 18 months and what your biggest concerns are, which has led to you really to speak out?
Yeah. Well, AJ, I'm actually going to be speaking on behalf of thousands of nurses in Queensland. Because I'm 61, I'm at the end of my career. Because of APRA gagging orders, nurses and healthcare workers and doctors are not allowed to speak out. If they do, their registrations are threatened. So I am not afraid of that.
Can I just ask you there, based on that, I just want to dig a little bit deeper into the whole gagging orders. So when you say gagging orders, like what does that actually look like to the normal person? What would a gagging order look like?
Sure. APRA, which is our governing body, I'll give you actually a bit of a line of order here. In November 2020, in November 2020, I've just got my notes. Sorry.
That's fine.
Yeah, here we go. In November 2020, the EUA, which is Emergency Use Authorisation Declaration, that was put in place in November 2020. In March 2021, the APRA, which is our governing body for health professionals, send us an email and put a gagging order on health professionals and nurses and doctors that if we spoke negatively or any way demeaning of the vaccine or side effects or what was happening in this way, our registrations would be threatened. Therefore, since March or around that time, many health professionals, doctors, nurses, allied health, have actually been gagged. They're not allowed to say anything for fear of losing their registration and their livelihoods.
So just on that, I mean, when you first received that gagging order, and many of you, what did that feel like? Because to me, that would have raised the alarm bell straight away, thinking like, well, if I'm being gagged to not talk negatively about this medical intervention, then surely there must be something wrong with it. Like, what if it was that good and does what it says on the tin? We'd all be encouraged to sing its praises.
That's right, and it's red flags up everywhere, because our healthcare is between you and your doctor. It's not between you, the doctor, and the government. And at the moment, that's exactly what it's become. And so when you're in the health profession, our nurses are our patients' advocates. We look out for our patients. We, in the healthcare, that's our heart career. We want to look out for our patients' health. We want to look out for their well-being. And when we put gagged orders in place, when there's gagged orders, if something's not right, you can't speak out. And so we in the health industry, many people have seen that something's not right here. And so a lot has not been said in the public arena for the fear of losing registrations, being reprimanded by AHPRA, the governing body. And
what about the, because obviously there's always going to be sort of conflict of understanding and conflict of opinion, like in the healthcare settings between nurses. Not all nurses believe that there's something sinister going on. There's obviously a lot of nurses that believe that these jabs are the best things in sliced bread. We have this in the UK, you have it all over the place and actively promote it. But then obviously there's, similar to the wider population, there's people that clearly see what's going on, and there's people that just have no idea, just totally blind to it. What was that like in the kind of the healthcare setting? Was it sort of like a daily battle? Was there like many sort of arguments, or or because of the gagging, was there a lot more people who could clearly see what's going on?
Where I worked, I could actually brag about the team that I worked with. We had a great team, doctors, nurses, 20-odd nurses and over 30 doctors. Because it was a super clinic, we actually closed one of the 4 clinics off to give the COVID vaccines. Because I refused to give the jab, because I'd done my own research, and anyone with a pea-sized brain would want to do research on anything that's new in the medical world. I could see that there were problems with it when we first did the modules, because our clinic was one of the clinics giving the vaccines, and we were giving up over 120 a day at the beginning, and we had to do modules. The Queensland government module actually stated, and this is the very first module we had to do, otherwise we couldn't give the vaccines, but we did it because I was working in the surgery, even though I didn't have anything to do with it. The actual module said that this is not a proven vaccine. Alarm bells went off in my head immediately. Well, if it's not a proven vaccine, hasn't done the safety trials, and the module actually stated it, then why are we doing this? Why are we giving this to people when it hasn't done this long-term safety trials to know what's going to happen down the track, which every other vaccine has had done? Yeah, and that's what separates it from other vaccines. I'm not an anti-vaxxer. I've had all my vaccines for flying. I've had all my vaccines for nursing requirements, except this one.
Yeah, I'm exactly the same as you. When I was in Parliament Square yesterday, as I mentioned, I was literally standing shoulder to shoulder with all these care workers who have all been, struck off and lost their jobs, 60,000 of them across the country. And I was talking yesterday, and it was on the 11th of the 11th. So I was there paying my respect to the cenotaph, as usual. And I said to them, I said, I never thought I'd ever see myself on the 11th of the 11th talking about anything other than, remembering the very people that gave her freedoms for our freedoms, paid the ultimate sacrifice. And then there's tens of thousands of people that are having their freedom to work, freedom to live, freedom to put food on the table taken away. And And I was talking about this all yesterday, and some lady asked if I was an anti-vaxxer, and I said, no, not at all, I never have been. You know, just like you, I've had all my inoculations, you know, yellow fever to go to like Sierra Leone. I even had anthrax, unfortunately, before going to Iraq back in 2003, and that wasn't a nice experience. It's a good job there's no camera phones around then, I tell you. But I totally get what you're saying. You know, nothing is to do with being a anti-vaxxer, and that's just a term that the world's media has used to basically create a derogatory label on people that you know, don't want to have this vaccine at this stage. They just want to see more data. There's nothing wrong with that.
That's right.
And you know, for anybody watching who's, you know, I've you know, had the vaccination, who's you know, wants to learn a bit more perhaps, or is just watching it because this is the first podcast we've ever seen to do with this. You know, you need to understand that the term anti-vaxxer is just literally what's been drilled and programmed into people by the media to create a label. That's literally all it is. Just like the whole LGBT thing, it's just to create division. You know, black and white. It's all been, this division's all been around for years, and they're just using this as another way of doing so. So you know, the fact that you have had all your inoculations in the past, you know, you've towed the line, you've been as per probably your contracts, but in the contracts, and it's the same, you know, I've seen them, and it's the same for people here. At no point in any of these contracts does it state that you may face unemployment if you do not partake in an experimental medical procedure, which this is.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And I actually want to stress, you know, I'm actually would like to speak out on the thousands of nurses behind me, because if I lose my registration because I'm speaking out, so be it. Sure. And because there's many people behind me that have little hungry mouths to feed, they have their mortgages to pay, and it is a disgrace what's happening. And these nurses, they work in the CCU units, the ICU units, the ED departments, the general wards, and they've given me eyewitness accounts of patients that have had massive adverse reactions that the TGA are not reporting. The TGA is our, you know, medical governing authority, Therapeutic Goods Association. Now, some of these adverse reactions that some of these nurses have been reporting are just gobsmacking. You know, a 20-year-old was found dead 3 days after a jab with blood clots coming out of her facial orifices. There's been a massive increase in pericarditis and myocarditis into the ED departments. I know a CCU nurse, which is a coronary care unit, at least one every single day of a young person with heart conditions and pericarditis, and they're in hospital for weeks. And often, you know, they have lifelong issues, and it can often also result in death.
Well, you've been a nurse for 39 years. Have you ever seen anything like this in your whole career?
No, not at all. Not at all. There was a nurse that reported in her ward, they have 20 out of 24 patients. This is just one hospital, one ward in all of Australia. That the elderly, it's been an increase in 10 per day of elderly people coming in, and this is in the early stages in the rollout when they hit the elderly patients and the more vulnerable. They were coming in with unusual but very similar symptoms, and they were all vaccinated, and they were in hospital for weeks, and they'd all had their injection at least 2 weeks, 1 to 2 weeks prior to them getting sick. Now, some of the doctors, and this is our problem, because of the gagging, our doctors are not speaking out. They're seeing it, but they're not speaking out for fear of retribution. And, you know, doctors are telling family members and denying that it's got anything to do with the jab. They're actually telling nurses and the patients that, oh, they've just got dementia, and they had the vaccine 1 to 2 weeks prior. And this is a nurse is telling me this. And the elderly patient is driving 2 weeks prior, looking after himself, being perfectly normal. Now, dementia is slow and progressive. They're not recording them. And I just can't understand where's the healthcare. It's almost like it's health sabotage. And
well, it's obviously the corruption lies deep within. The fact that they've installed these gagging orders and your threat to your own, I guess, everyday life as a human being. But I think everybody's got a switch, haven't they? A tolerance switch, which they'll switch on or off depending on their own situation. It is really sad to see. I mean, personally, this is just my personal opinion, and this comes from somebody who's like been to some horrible places in the world and seen what humanity can do to each other. I don't actually have any respect for doctors who are actively causing harm and allowing harm, not reporting it because of their own job. Which can be replaced. You could, as a clever intellectual person who's been through medical school, I'm pretty sure you'd be able to retrade in something else. You just haven't got the moral values, and that's the only way I look at it. Because if they did speak out, so many more lives would be saved, and they'd probably be able to sleep better at night.
Yes, yes. Well, our nursing code of ethics and the Hippocratic Oath says do no harm. And I'd like to put out a plea to all the people that are jabbing, the doctors and the nurses that are jabbing. Can you honestly 100% say, after hearing and looking at the research for the adverse side effects and what it's doing to people and harming people, that when you jab, you can 100% say that you are not harming these people?
Yeah.
I can't grasp it.
Well, they're not. The thing is, these people, unfortunately, aren't going to be able to hide. And I know that for a fact that, like, here in UK, there is active, cohorts of lawyers, both from the UK, Europe, the United States, and that, all coming together, and they're gathering all of this information as evidence. And it's not just on doctors and nurses. It's on people in the military, people in the police, people in corporates that are actively coercing people into getting these jabs, and then having no liability over, the person in question. So I get a number of people in the military reaching out to me all the time, obviously being, ex-soldier, and they're just like gobsmacked by how people have reacted in the military, but then they're being told by their superiors that they won't promote, they won't, be able to deploy, they won't be able to do any of this stuff. It's never in writing, funny enough, which is quite cowardice.
Yes.
But all these people are making statements now, like actively making statements. So if anybody in the military is watching this and you've been coercing people into having these inoculations, I'd go find yourself some legal representation, like, very quickly. And it's the same. It's going to be the same for lawyers and scientists, doctors, nurses. And we've seen what happened in Nuremberg 1. That's why the Nuremberg Code's there.
Right.
And this is why Nuremberg 2.0 basically is being built now, through all this evidence like we're talking about now is all used as evidence in trial.
Yes. And even the nurses have said to me that are being gagged and quietened, the ones that have not been jabbed they've lost their jobs. We've had 7,000 to 8,000 lose their jobs just in the last few weeks in Queensland.
How many was that? Sorry,
7,000 to 8,000.
7,000 to 8,000.
Yeah, and that is the government is actually saying 4,000, but the problem is the media have said only 4,000, and it's interesting because it's actually 7 to 8 because about 4,000 took leave and they're advised to take leave by their lawyers or take any kind of leave they could so they didn't have to get the jab and prolong it and delay. So they're not reporting the actual numbers. And when the government and the media are not being honest with statistics and numbers, I am absolutely raise question marks whether they're being honest about how many people have actually been jabbed. And because there are expiry dates on these COVID vaccines. And so they've spent so much money on the COVID vaccines, bringing in millions into the country. There's expiry dates on them. So they're pushing their vaccines and they're giving, I believe, super inflated numbers that have had it to make the others feel guilty. Oh, I'm the only one left. I better hurry up and get it. When they're being coerced, nurses and people are being bullied in the workplace. There's medical division, and where I used to work in a great nursing place, I'm hearing in every area and from all the nurses, my colleagues are saying we're being bullied and harassed and demeaned. We're called names, we're called stupid, we're called, it's just incredible. From a team that was very cohesive in a lot of medical working places, it's not that anymore. Nurses have been saying, one nurse had an anaphylaxis to the first jab because she wanted to keep her job. And she was told, oh no, just have the second one and just see what it does. Another nurse was told to have it, and she had a reaction, and she's got an 18-month sibling, a breastfeeding child, and she's got a disabled child as well, and she was told just to have it. Like, they're not taking any notice of, there's no exemptions being given, and doctors aren't giving exemptions to medical conditions or whatever because of fear of what the reprimanding that they'll get. And so it's just so much control by the government. And this is what, a lot of the nurses that have left, thousands and thousands, and that's just in Queensland alone. That's not counting the other states.
Yeah, and you know what? This is what people seem to forget. It's the same in your country, obviously, as it is here, New Zealand, Canada, and places like our governments work for us. Like,
yes.
I talked about this yesterday at Parliament Square. They work for us. They're elected in by us. Right. Our taxes pay their wages. It's just the fact that these bureaucrats suddenly run or take over things of public health just goes to show you just how sinister this is and how much money is involved. Now,
yes.
You touched on a few key points there about obviously doctors not notifying of any of these adverse reactions and stuff like that. What has from your experience and your conversations, what's it been like amongst the children? Because obviously the kids are very much a big part of my life and working with teenagers and stuff like that. I'm very, very passionate about it. And unfortunately, we've had a number of children here die in the UK from the jabs. There's a group of people that are working on behalf of some of these parents at the minute, and there is some inquiries open against murder charges, which I mentioned on some shows before. But there's also a lot of children suffering from myocarditis, as you mentioned earlier. We've got kids locally that play football in the local football teams who have got myocarditis. I've spoke to some of the coaches, and there's a number in the hospitals. I had a senior nurse reach out to me who's quit because she couldn't stand it anymore. They said they had 11 children come in 2 weeks between the ages of 12 and 14 with strokes. Now, that's never been heard of in my lifetime, or I don't think anyone's lifetimes really. What's the general sort of cases in terms of adverse reactions amongst children that you're hearing from?
Because they've just started rolling them out with the children, I actually haven't talked to many people regarding the children, because that hasn't been my area of knowledge. So I actually can't really comment on that. But I know that is a lot of fear. There is fear. And when you have fear, fear paralyzes. And that's exactly what it's doing to the community. So AJ, I can't comment on that one because I haven't looked into that with the children.
No, that's actually fun.
But if that's happening in other countries, and we are seeing it and we have heard of it in other countries, it's frightening to see what's going to happen here.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do know there was some teenagers in New South Wales that sadly passed away when they herded 24,000 children into a football stadium with parents not allowed in. If that doesn't sing alarm bells, I don't know what was. Weren't they offering 10 golden tickets as well to college or university?
Yes.
Yeah.
Right.
It was like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, wasn't it?
They were bribing, vouchers and things, especially to the Aboriginal community, to get them vaccinated. And the Aboriginal community up in Northern Territory, I think it was, one of the Aboriginal leaders, had his shot. A week later, he's dead. So that just put fear into all of the Aboriginal community. And then they wonder why, because they're quite a spiritual kind of race. And they wonder why, they don't want to get jabbed. In Cherbourg in Queensland, when the shutdowns were on, the army surrounded the Cherbourg Aboriginal community to let no one in and no one out. And that doesn't even hit the media. And that's from a nurse up there.
This is classic. That is classic 1930s Germany, brown shirts, like if ever I've seen it. And it still blows my mind, having lived in the country, a beautiful place, that this is actually happening there.
This is communism. And I mean, lest we forget, the Jews on the 8th of July in 1942, the Jews were forbidden to enter all kinds of public places, restaurants, cafes, cinemas, concert, museums. And that's exactly what our Palaszczuk government, in the Premier of Queensland, has just mandated by the 17th of December this year.
Yeah. How many deaths have you had from COVID?
Beg your pardon?
How many deaths have you had with COVID in Queensland? I'm pretty sure you can count them on one hand, can't you?
It hasn't even reached, 2,000. We're way under over, we're only just over 1,000. And while we're on that, the TGA reports, the COVID-19 vaccine safety data reports that on the 24th of October 2020, the surveys were sent out and 4,425,137 people, so that's nearly 4.5 million people, were surveyed. 43% of them said that they had at least one adverse side effect. And I'm sure some of them would be just minor, but the hospitals are seeing major. The TGA reports that we've had over 76,000, I think it is now, of adverse side effects. We've had over 700 deaths. But guess what? On the let me see, somewhere here, sorry. On the reports where it says that the COVID-19 at a glance, the adverse effects are only taken on day 3. So out of that survey, they're only taken on day 3. So any adverse reactions on day 4, day 5, 1 week, 1 month, 2 weeks is not reported. And they're only the self-reported ones. That's the self-reported, and that's on the TGA reports.
Wow.
Under the Freedom of Information.
Yeah, that's quite damning.
Yeah, and even the COVID-19 Information Centre of Vaccines Resources says, due to large numbers of adverse events being reported through Queensland, on it goes, and then they took it down because it was, being broadcasted, health professionals were finding this and looking into the freedom of information, and they take it down. So they are actually admitting all these adverse events, but they're not bringing that out, and they're not stopping the mandates, which is devastating.
Well, do you know what, really, again, this blows my mind, how they're bringing these mandates in for somebody to go and get this, this jab, which has a 99.7 on average chance of survival in a state which is getting very warm, where the disease wouldn't even live.
Yes, that's right.
You're then being scrutinised and stopped from going to a cafe or a bar or something like that for a disease which you're not going to be carrying.
Yes, I'd like to see the pandemic. Where is the pandemic if they've threatened our critical medical capacity? They have taken the jobs of so many healthcare workers when we're already short-staffed, and even ambulance officers are being laid off. We've got, I don't know if you call it ambulance ramping. Have you heard of that term?
No.
The ambulance ramping is when you've got a hospital and you've got the ambulance lineup. So an ambulance brings in a patient to ED departments. We've had, and this is even before COVID, this is how short-staffed we are. And then they lay off all these nurses. You'd think they'd want all hands on deck if there's a pandemic. Ambulance ramping is when there's a backup of ambulances, 5, 6, 7 ambulances can't get into ED because of short staffing. And so patients are waiting with the ambulance officers to get into ED departments. And I've had ambulance officers say to me on one shift alone, he had 6 back-to-back cardiac patients when they just had the jab in one shift back-to-back.
Wow.
Where's a pandemic if they've threatened the livelihoods of so many healthcare workers? Where is it?
Yeah. again, people don't ask themselves these questions. It's literally just like it's like tunnel vision. And I've asked this, I was like, where's all these people dropping down around you? And do you actually know anybody? Because the thing is, over here in the UK, we get people like, oh, I know, I had a family member die of COVID. Well, yes. You know, without, I know it's a sensitive subject, but did they actually die of COVID, or did they go into hospital with comorbidities? They were then given remdesivir, which then gives them acute kidney failure, lung failure, which gives them obviously the onboard symptoms of like chronic COVID, which then puts them on a ventilator, and the ventilator kills them. And then they think that, and they're labeled COVID. This is what's been happening for the last like 20 months here in the UK.
That's right. In Australia, AJ, excuse me, from July 20 to 21, the people that died in car accidents was 1,148. In the same period from July 20 to 21, the people that died with COVID was 915. You know, where's the rationale behind all of this?
Well, I love the saying, it shouldn't take a brain surgeon to work this out, but like there's some brain surgeons out there that can't work this out.
That's exactly right, yeah. But even the unvaccinated people are saying, you know, it's our choice. This has come down to our freedoms. And even the vaccinated people, are now getting on board and saying, well, these mandates are wrong. We should have a choice. And they're even standing alongside us. We're trying to encourage more and more. But, you know, there are nurses. One nurse had the vaccine to save her job and, you know, because she needed the money to work. She can't work now because she's debilitated and she's got a young family.
And how is she looked after? Is she looked after and compensated for these injuries?
No. Like they're left on their own.
Well, there you go, ladies and gents. Like it is just a massive lottery. And always has been.
Right. Russian roulette.
Yeah, it is. It genuinely is.
These people are saying, there was I saw a video of a young 23-year-old who, she was in a wheelchair. She was perfectly normal, no medical history at all. And she had the jab because she wanted to do the right thing for her country. She was told it was safe. There was nothing to fear. She had the jab. She's totally debilitated now with paralysis, and she's saying that I've got to do the right thing for my country. I'm doing the right thing. They're telling me it's okay, but it's not okay. This is not okay. And you know, why in the health industry? Why are we here? Why have we given our lives to saving people's lives to help their health when nobody else seems to care? Nobody in the health industry is the ones that are not speaking up. That they probably know it, but they don't care enough. Where's that morality and the ethics gone in the healthcare industry?
Well, it seems to all be bought and paid for through gagging orders and the threats of their livelihood. Like I think it's clear and obvious to say. And to be honest, if that was, I don't know how I would feel getting up every morning, going to, or you know, before every shift, going to a shift, asking yourself the question like, what's going to come through the door today that I've got to keep my mouth shut about, or I'm not going to be able to feed my kids. And that's the problem with these governments, is that, you know, they've installed behavioural scientists and you know, teams of psychologists from day one who know exactly how to control people. We know here in the UK, we've got the SAGE group, the advisor group to the government, who employed the Nudge group, which basically specialised in behavioural science and studied the UK population for 5 to 6 years before this even like took off. So they knew exactly how to manipulate the masses. And you know, as we clearly know now, you know, anybody only needs to watch any of my previous podcasts with like Richard Fleming and Dolores Cahill and Dr. Pete McCulloch to know that this, not just the vaccine, but the virus in itself is a bioweapon, clear and obvious. The vaccinated people are passing the bioweapon to each other, which is the Delta variant, that, you know, their body is producing it. I've totally lost count of the amount of people I know here in the UK who are double vaccinated and suffering but with bad COVID. But they just point out the fact that if they didn't have the jab, they'd end up in hospital. But nobody can answer that because you don't know the difference between the two.
They're just turning a blind eye.
Yeah,
they're just missing it completely.
It's clinging onto the decision that they made at the time. And I've always said we've got to support people like this, and this is why I've set the forum up on my website, mrajroberts.com/community, and you can actually go there and you can actually see all these medical documentations and things that can help you. But also for those who are vaccinated, they can actually go there, and Dr. Kat Lindley, who's absolutely fantastic. I swear, she genuinely swears she is an angel brought to this earth. And she's created a fantastic article, which has got loads of, it's pretty much a cocktail of really good vitamins and minerals that you can take to help to mitigate the spike protein in your body and reboost your immune system to give you that protection that these jabs, unfortunately, drawing down, because they do deplete your immune system, don't they?
Yes, that's right, totally. And our natural immune system has, our bodies are magnificent beings, and yeah.
What's that thing you said then? What's that thing you said then? Immune system, was it? I've never heard of that. What is it? Oh, right.
Oh.
Yeah. I've never heard of this.
It's found in a syringe, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I'll have one of those immune systems.
Yeah. I'd like to point out, AJ, our health minister in Queensland, who's now just become the governor, who was, passing on all this mandating and what we should and shouldn't do before she became governor. Her husband is an advisor to Pfizer.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this is interesting. Her husband's an advisor to Pfizer, who's the health chief officer. She's now governor, just in the last couple of weeks. Anastasia Palaszczuk, our premier, her father is head of gene data storage. So I wonder, is it an ulterior motive with all the PCR testing and all the collaboration that's going on? Now, our Australian Minister for Health, Greg Hunt, has got no medical background whatsoever. In fact, he was the director of strategy at the World Economic Forum.
Wow.
These are the people that are pushing pens and telling us in the health industry, the scientists, the doctors, the nurses, that what we are doing is wrong by not being vaccinated.
Wow. Follow the money.
Yes, that's right. And you wonder whether there's an ulterior motive, which it seems to be. That's the whole thing.
Well, yeah, it's all in every country.
That's right. And so by our governments, and I am not an anti-monarchist, I absolutely revere and respect our Queen Elizabeth's authority and position. However, I actually wrote to her on the 4th of October last month, pleading with her for the governors and for Jeanette Young, that their governorship to be nullified and to stand them down because they're not acting. Now, we feel that our freedoms, is she there to protect our freedoms? I know she's not there to govern us or to become politically involved, but our freedoms, there's a duty of care. And so, I pleaded with her, and that's something that I've never done before. Our freedoms are going. In Australia, we have no freedoms left very shortly. And we're being sucked into a vacuum of no return.
Yeah. And the thing is as well, is that if and you say that, as an unvaccinated person, you have no freedoms, but the vaccinated aren't going to have any freedoms, because very quickly, unless you get your booster, you're not vaccinated. And you just got to look at the language.
Yes, and isn't it interesting that an Oxford University study says that 22% every month of the vaccine efficacy is lost. So in 6 months' time, the vaccinated are as unvaccinated as the unvaccinated.
They've just got more graphene oxide and hydrogel in their system, that's it.
Yeah, it just mind boggles. It's just no rationale, no rationale at all.
So I think in a position like yours, where you're speaking out, and rightly so, and please continue to do so. For the people who perhaps took the vaccine because they felt like they were, you know, there's only way to save their jobs, and you know, they really didn't want it, you know, which is a horrible thing, you know, the fact that we're even having this conversation. But you know, what sort of advice would you have for them as a healthcare professional that they can maybe do to try and help their body, you know, and reduce the risk of adverse reactions later on down the line?
Sure, I actually feel for them, actually. They say that, you know, even ivermectin has been banned in Australia. That was done after the gagging order.
Wow.
Interesting, isn't it? And so these people that have had vaccinations that are being sick, and I'm seeing them all the time just in the society, that in our community, and I would be telling them to get onto the vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, and ivermectin if they can find someone to give them a script. But the doctors, that's looking for a needle in a haystack.
They're looking at imprisonment, aren't they, doctors, if they prescribe ivermectin? I think it was in Western Australia. I think it was.
That's right. That's right. The restrictions are amazing
for something that won a Nobel Prize.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And ivermectin is proven by Pierre Corey that through his studies that it's 88% effective from reducing hospital admissions and death. How can they ignore that? How can our governments ignore that?
Wow.
It's all about money.
Oh yeah, I've said it from the start, like follow the money. It's, you know, I've been saying it constantly. I mean, old Gladys, who's the New South Wales Premier, she had to step down because she'd been offered $68 million by AstraZeneca to collapse the economy, lock everybody down, and install their policies.
You've got to hunt for information, and we're not being told. It's all just propaganda through the mainstream media.
Yeah, I get,
and even the protests here, like with the lockdowns and people just wanting the mandates to stop. A lot of them have had their vaccines, and the mainstream media aren't even covering it. They refuse to cover it, you know. And if they do, they say, "Oh, there's 1,000 people there," but the one in Melbourne just the other week was up to 30,000 people, you know, in front of the square in government in Melbourne. The mainstream media just refused to report it. So the big farmers are controlling everything.
Yeah. No, absolutely, and I think, you know, when people soon realise that we have this amazing thing called a body and an immune system, and that these pharma companies only operate by keeping you sick. You know, they can't operate with you know, a whole world full of healthy people. So you know, they make billions and billions and billions. You only have to see how much these companies have been making through the pandemic, but along people as well. So, you know, in UK, over 300,000 businesses closed for good during lockdowns, but 600 billionaires were made in 18 months. So, you know, you don't need to be a brain surgeon to work out what's going on.
Isn't it interesting? They can't feed the world, but they can vaccinate everybody in the world.
Yeah.
Incredible.
Yeah. Exactly that. What made me laugh is in Sierra Leone, where I do charity work, in Freetown, the capital, they were telling people a while back now that if you didn't get vaccinated, then you weren't allowed to leave Freetown. But obviously, I haven't been there, know the place. Majority of people were like, I can't even afford to get a motorbike taxi to the next suburb, let alone leave Freetown. But I'm always looking, you know, most people are looking for the next meal is the next day, let alone being able to leave the city. It's just, again, it's just another, it's a lot easier to bribe poorer countries. But I think because so many people, especially like Sierra Leone, are so heavily religious as well, it's very much against their ethics. And obviously they're fully aware of obviously what happened during like the Ebola issues they had there. And the fact that Dr. Fauci and co used the Ebola crisis to trial remdesivir, and they trialed it on loads of people there, thousands of people. 54% of the people died. Now, Fauci has known this and then taken this into this pandemic. So if anybody gets a chance, watch the episode I did with Dr. Brian Ardis, who has studied this from day one, and he shows you all the evidence how remdesivir actually caused 400,000 deaths in the United States, because people were coming in the early stages of the pandemic. The doctors were all on the news going, "Oh, we've never seen a respiratory disease like this that affects the, you know, acute kidney failure." And then on day 3, and it was like, well, that's because the remdesivir's doing it to them. And none of these doctors were clicking, it was actually that was killing them, and they were all getting labelled as COVID deaths.
Yeah.
So same as here in the UK, in the care homes, they were just getting plastered with midazolam, and all labelled as COVID deaths and used as the first wave, to scare the population.
Yeah, there's a difference between wisdom and intelligence.
Yeah.
Big difference.
Yeah.
Big difference. Yeah.
No, absolutely. So moving forward, for you, Carolyn, obviously, I guess using the AJ Roberts show as a stepping stone, is this your new path for the foreseeable future? Sort of speaking out on behalf of nurses all around Australia and the wider world.
Well, I've actually told a number of nurses, look, if they want me to speak up, I'm happy to stand on the front line.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's great. It's very courageous, and like you're saying, it takes a special person to do so because of circumstances and stuff like that. So I absolutely wholeheartedly applaud you for that. It is really great to see, and I hope it actually encourages more people to do so. I really do.
Well, I'm not an expert. I'm a registered nurse. I've got no public speaking history at all, but this is a heartfelt issue. It's devastating our country. It's devastating our people. It's taking our freedoms. We're being sucked into a vacuum of no return with our freedoms. It's shameful. And if I can't do anything, then I'm going to do something.
Brilliant. Yeah, I love that. Absolutely. And what I'll do is today I'll make it a prerogative to put you in touch with some quite influential people in Australia who have got podcasts and shows and stuff like that, to give you the platform that you deserve, and all the nurses out there deserve as well, to get that message out.
That's great. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah. Can I leave you with just one thing, which is quite personal? I'm a Christian, and I know this is not your platform, but the Bible actually says that what is hidden, the secrets in the dark, will be brought to daylight. And I personally would rather stand with God and be judged by the world than stand with the world and be judged by God. And you know who my best coach is in life all the way through? My best coach is Jesus Christ.
Beautiful. Love it.
Yeah. And, all these people that are unvaxxed, they're not bad people.
No.
They're not lawbreakers. They want to uphold what they consciously believe that is true to themselves. And we need to support each other in that, and respect each other. And that's certainly gone down the tube completely.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I love that. Absolutely love that message, Carolyn. Thank you very much. Guys and girls, I'm sure you enjoyed all the information that Carolyn shared with us today. It's been an absolute pleasure to host a fantastic medical professional like Carolyn, all the way from Australia, on the show to really explain what is happening down under in these medical settings. That, as she clearly mentioned, so many professionals out there are very, very scared to speak out about, because of obviously gagging orders and being threatened with their livelihoods. Many of these are kids to feed, amongst all the other sort of mental troubles and issues that people have to deal with on a day-to-day basis there. Please do some research on Australia. Use my podcast if necessary to really see what's happening there. I really want to bring to light all the information. There's some great people obviously on the ground in Australia doing some great stuff. Rebel News and a number of other people there doing fantastic work. Jamie McIntyre and Craig Schulz and a number of other people. I'll put you in touch with Carolyn. So please, guys, watch all their media and what they're actually reporting on, because unfortunately here in the UK, what might seem like everything that's open right now, we're slowly creeping towards having freedoms taken away. They're already talking about bringing in a pilot scheme for social credit system in January. They're already talking about digital currency, and this is what they want to gear you towards: is a cashless society, social credit systems, Chinese communism, which has already been in play over there for about 4 years. As I mentioned before, you jaywalk across the street in China, your face is picked up on camera, you're instantly fined out your bank account. And that's the way things are going to go here if you let it. But all of this stops, ladies and gents, when you actually stand up and say no, no more. That includes here in the UK. You know, if you're due to get your booster and you're not sure about it, you know, please know that you have full support of everybody and it's your decision. You have the choice, which is a fantastic thing. However, please do research and know that you're just adding to the amount of graphene oxide and hydrogel that you put in your body, which is going to massively reduce your immune system and or make you extremely sick in the very near future. But if you stand up and say no, you say no to mask mandates, you say no to masking children, you say no to testing healthy people, then all of this stops. And it's the same in every country. So I hope everyone can take a little bit of inspiration from Carolyn today and, you know, install that into your own lives and really think about where your ethics lie and where you stand moving forward. Thanks again, Carolyn. It's been an absolute pleasure.
We'll leave one thought with you. From the 17th of December in Queensland, they have mandated that any person that's unvaxxed cannot enter hospital unless it's an emergency or their patient or they have family that are dying. Anyone that's unvaxxed can't go to aged care, disability services, day surgeries, GP clinics, pharmacies, optometrists, allied health, dentists, private nurse offices, private pathology. The list goes on. Restaurants, public places, theatres, concerts, sporting. They have completely devastated our country.
In a state where it's warming up to be extremely warm, the virus wouldn't even be live, and the cases of ridiculous deaths are just extremely low compared to everything else that's out there that has been for a long time. Absolutely barking mad.
Welcome to Australia. Come to the communist country.
Wow, unbelievable. Well, you heard it there, ladies and gents. You know, this is what we could be looking at very shortly here on the shores in the UK, throughout Europe. We're already seeing it in Lithuania. Austria have just brought this in. Please look outside the shores of this country. I really, really encourage you to do so because you will be absolutely shocked to the core. On a more positive note, guys, please, if you can do, head to mrajroberts.com/community and you'll find a lot of documentation there, legal help that'll actually help you. You know, there's proper legal notice of liabilities there to serve schools, workplaces, corporates, all the people that basically who are trying to pressurize people into having this vaccination, who don't actually know the law. They just think they're doing the right thing. Because unfortunately, there is a number of deaths and serious injuries occurring. Now, we're already seeing here in the UK that arrests are going to soon be made on head teachers on behalf of like families of children that have been severely harmed and injured. It is going to happen. All the evidence is there. The police are on side with this. So it's our job really to encourage and educate these education settings to what can actually happen. But you'll find all that information on mrajroberts.com/community. You'll find loads of other articles there from reputable and credible, highly qualified doctors and scientists, that peer-reviewed papers, and any other really important information that I can try and get out to you in regards to employment and mandates that you can use in your personal settings. But for me and Carolyn, have a fantastic day, ladies and gents, and I'll see you next time very shortly on the AJ Roberts Show.